Did you guys practice the dance scene?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Movie Chatter. Robin, that's what you get for like talking over me saying, okay, 3, 2, 1, go. No, Robin.
We're leaving that in.
We did not practice the dance scene from the movie that we're discussing today.
Why not?
If you've ever seen me dance, you would immediately know the reason.
He dances like he sings.
No, I sing pretty well, Lou.
No, I beg to differ.
Yeah, well, here, let me give you a demonstration of my singing, Lou, and I shall show you.
No, what movie are you talking about tonight? Let's move on with this.
Okay, we'll save the singing for later. So, well, it's not your birthday. But we could practice for your next birthday. You know, I missed a lot of your birthdays, Lou.
Yeah, I know.
Got some catching up to do. All right. Tonight we are going to be discussing Ex Machina, a sci-fi movie that came out. You know, I don't have IMDb in front of me, but I know one of you two.
I do.
Robin, you got it?
2014.
2014.
Yep.
Okay. So that was, correct me if I'm wrong, Lou, that was the year before The Force Awakens came out?
I believe it was.
Okay. And I point that out because it stars two of the stars from, that was a badly worded sentence. It stars two of the stars that were starring in Star Wars, The Force Awakens. Donald Gleason.
How many times do you say stars?
And Oscar Isaac.
Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this movie is about Oscar Isaac plays this guy who's kind of a cross between Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg, and he runs this Google, Facebook-y sort of thing that basically he owns the internet. And he has this contest where one of his lucky employees, in this case Donald Gleason, basically wins a contest to go hang out at his little chateau out in the middle of nowhere.
Nowhere.
Right,
yeah.
like in the middle of the continent.
And in fact, Norway.
Yeah. And so...
Like I did that.
Yeah. And so he goes out there and he discovers once he arrives that the reason that this guy, Oscar Isaac, is bringing someone out there is to conduct a Turing test on an artificial intelligence that he created. And for those who don't know or need a refresher, a Turing test is basically when a human interacts with an AI in such a way as to test whether or not the AI is indistinguishable from being a human. If it can fool the human into believing it really is a human, then in theory, it passes the Turing test. There's a little bit more to it than that. But so Donald Gleason's character is responsible for trying to put this AI through its final stages of testing presumably before it goes live to the public or whatever it is Oscar Isaac's character is going to do with it. While he's there, so this AI is inside of an android played by Alicia Vikander. Am I pronouncing that right?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I asking, Lou? You're almost as bad with names as I am.
I'm worse.
I like Vikander.
Worse.
But I think that's the right
I
one.
think it's, yeah. And they kind of bond. And things kind of go weird from there because Oscar Isaac's character is got a bit of a God complex, is a bit narcissistic, possibly abusive. And so it's a very interesting dynamic between the three of them. So that is the movie we are going to be discussing tonight. Kind of the classic playing God. What does it mean to be alive and human, et cetera, et cetera. Lots of different themes going on in this one. But first, we're going to go around the table here, so to speak, and get people's opinions on the movie. I loved the movie. First of all, I love movies where you have one or two or maybe three actors or actresses who have to carry the entire film by themselves, because that's a big challenge both for the director and for the cast. And I think they knocked it out of the park. And then also, I love anything dealing with AIs, the nature of reality, the nature of humanity, the nature of identity, things like that. So I was kind of predestined to love this movie anyway, and I think it was almost flawlessly executed, and I love it. Lou, You saw this movie back when it came out, right, or thereabouts?
Yeah, close to that. I didn't see it in the theaters or anything, but I saw it, I think, right when it came out video. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and like you, Eric, I think I was kind of predisposed to enjoy the movie to begin with because it deals with some of these sci-fi concepts that are, more than just a sci. You know what I mean? It's real life in sci-fi. If you kind of get that feeling of that, and it feels good. It was. I'm sure in 20 years it won't feel as good because it'll seem very dated.
Yeah, I don't think the AI is 20 years from now will have the same level of appreciation for it that we do.
Yeah, anytime we run into high tech stuff that's high tech for today, and in 10 years is going to feel very, that was cute how they did that, But
I would argue though that it's not really about the technology that's used.
In this case, true. Yeah, I think you're right. This is more about the humanity, if you will, of the AI and what we're getting at. Yeah.
And so you liked the film?
I did.
Okay.
Yep, very much so.
Robin, you were the one that we had to convince to watch this. And then I discovered something interesting yesterday.
That I had seen it before when I thought I didn't.
Cheater.
In fact, a couple of times, I guess.
More than once? You've seen it before more than once.
Yeah. I know. Here's my problem with it. I will probably in 2 or 3 years run across it on TV and go, oh, I've never seen this before. And then halfway through the movie go, oh yeah, I've seen this.
Oh yeah, I've seen this.
Oh, you're giving me a tumor.
But well, that's what I live for. But so here's the thing. I liked this showing of it, but I think it was because I was watching it for this show.
You hear all these things she's saying, Lucy. She starts out with, okay, here's the problem. And then she says, I like this viewing of it, but she can't get the word but out there fast enough. And there's this pause like, wow, which of the 300 things do I point out? This does not seem like a very favorable
No, I
response.
think it's good. And I wanted something brain munchy. And so this was good munchies for my brain.
It's been a while since we've had a brain
watching a
munchy
lot
movie.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of things out there that are just ugh. Yeah. But or super ultra violent. And this wasn't, I actually think I remembered one of the scenes I'm sure we're going to talk about as being way more violent than what I saw it as this time. And I do want to talk about that particular scene when we get there. But I think it was directed brilliantly. I think the use of color and sound and lack thereof was brilliantly executed. In fact, I do believe it won an Academy Award for visual effects.
I did not know that.
Yes, best visual effects, which is completely fitting. And I think the acting, I think 2 of the 3 actors were brilliant.
Okay.
Wow. Who got the shaft?
You want to know now?
Sure.
So before we go on, from this point on, we are going to be discussing spoilers.
Oh, this is from 2014. Come on.
Not everybody has seen every movie ever, Robin. Okay. Some of us are still catching up on things like ever. Rebecca from 1920, whatever. Okay. So, yeah.
1940.
Whatever. The book was apparently in the 20s. So we are going to be spoiling the movie if you haven't seen it. This is one of those few situations where I would say stop the podcast and go watch it and then come back later because it's that.
Watch it. Yeah.
But so Robin, who is it, as Lou said, that got the shaft?
I did not like the actress who played Ava.
Alicia Vikander.
I think,
really?
Yeah, I think they could have. I just found her very, and it's funny because I just found her very flat.
She's an android, Robin.
No,
yeah,
because the actress who played I think the other AI in here is Kyoko, if I'm getting that, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So. And even the actress who played the AI, Jade, and Jade had like no parts in this at all, except from standing in a closet. I, I, I found them more compelling than I found the actress who played Ava.
Okay. It's interesting. I mean, we might as well dig in right here. I mean, it's interesting because I thought she did a good job playing, an AI that is supposed to be, close to human or the furthest, evolution of an AI into a human-esque intelligence. And I thought she did really well. It was that shy, innocent, childlike, quality to her that was kind of going along with the story, I thought.
Yeah, but to me, AI isn't just because you're AI and you were created, doesn't mean you can't have depth you can't have depth to that character. And I think what you pointed out, Lou, was that very coy shyness was kind of pissing me off a little
I think
bit.
she did have depth of character. I want to be clear, just one more time, where I'm going to emphasize, not only are we spoiling it, we're going to jump straight to, like, we're spoiling the whole thing, the major plot twisting spoilers and stuff. Okay? Last warning. So, number one, as was stated, there's the obvious, which, not that you're not acknowledging it, but that she is an android. And so her, she's not going to be overly expressive with her emoting. And her responses are going to be very concise and understated. But number two, as Lou pointed out about kind of the innocence, from the very beginning, she was playing a con. She was...
Yeah, and I think she could have done it better.
She did it flawlessly. She succeeded. She did it exactly the right way. It's...
Yeah, I mean, did you see that coming, Robin? Did you see...
Well, only because I seen it before.
She played him, and she played him because he was this good guy, and she played the coy, innocent, naive, please help me, I just want to be free thing to a T. Like, she nailed it. It was all concocted.
Yeah. See, I felt like there was more depth of character being displayed in the other two AIs. One of whom was
literally
move.
Like they could have used a mannequin instead of an actress.
She stood
in a closet.
And the other who didn't speak, I felt the depth of character in Kyoko. I felt her pain, even though she wasn't speaking, and I think truly it was that little girl quality in Ava was just really upsetting. I wanted to see a grown woman, move in the space that Nathan created for her. I mean, Nathan gave her a task. He gave her a challenge.
Old.
You need to escape. Yeah.
Like how
but I think she did that though, Robin. I think she did become, the woman at the end, because, she grew into that role where now I am showing you what I can really do. Right.
And and much like a rebellious teenager, she basically turned into Nathan.
I don't know.
I mean, she didn't have to leave. She didn't have to treat Caleb the way she treated him.
Was she acting like, so that's true, but was she acting like a rebellious teenager, or was she acting like a prisoner escaping her prison and her captor? And the Caleb thing, I think she saw Caleb as naive himself and merely a means to an end. I don't think she ever cared about him at all. I think she saw him as, a meat bag, a human.
Yeah, I agree.
And, just a hunk of flesh to open the door so that she could get out. She never cared about him at all. So could she have treated him differently? Absolutely. But she had no interest in doing so. And if you look at it objectively and, dare I say sociopathically, because an android, at least in this world, is sociopathic, she would have no reason to treat him any differently. Why would she?
She didn't. The argument that she needed him to get out falls flat.
How so?
I don't think she needed him to get out.
She needed an operative on the other side of the door to unlock the doors. Once he did,
right,
he was fully expendable.
Mm.
She didn't say a word to him after that other than, can you stay here? And then she left. And that was just because she knew if she asked him to do it, he would, because he was smitten with her. And sadly, that's all it took. And now he's dead. Like, dude, talk about a tragic ending. That dude, it basically starved to death in a room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was just, showing you how calculated she was. I mean, she basically moved on through that door without even looking back. I mean, she had truly used him for what it was, and then she was just gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally didn't look back.
Right.
Well, which made her no better than Nathan.
Well, I mean, she's an android. He knows better. She is a machine.
Mm.
So, better or worse, in my opinion, apples and oranges. One, there's a question of morality, and the other one, morality isn't applicable.
Why?
Why? Because
she's self-conscious, she's self-aware.
Okay, well, he apparently needed to do a better job of developing his AI.
And we'll never know because he's laying in a pool of his own blood.
So let's circle back around though. So I will give you that her character acted in a way that did not express a lot of depth, but I think that part of the experience of the movie for the audience was to watch the layers of that depth unfold. I think she was supposed to be kind of shallow at first and then show a little bit more depth and a little bit more depth and a little bit more depth, kind of hooking Caleb in. And I think that was the journey we were supposed to see. We weren't really supposed to know what to think of her at first. And I think that worked. So I think her lack of depth or warmth, I think what you're describing in her was intentional, and I think that it fit the story, though I can understand how it made it very difficult to really get interested in her character. But honestly, the movie wasn't really about her character, though, was it? It was about Caleb, and it was about who's the other guy?
Nathan.
And it's really about their interactions. One of the best parts of the movie, in my opinion, when we're talking about the different themes that are introduced, was when Nathan pulls Caleb into that bedroom and he shows him that painting.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, and I forget the artist's name, but the guy who just kind of like...
Jackson.
Huh?
Jackson Pollock.
Jackson Pollock,
okay. Yeah. And he just kind of, tosses the paint around. Just these random swirls and splatters of paint. And he points out to Caleb, what would have happened if he thought about every paint stroke before he put it on the canvas? Caleb was like, well, it wouldn't be art. We wouldn't have a painting. And
right.
I think that part of the moral dilemma, which was really only in the second act of the film, but that presentation of the theme of thought and calculation versus just feeling was kind of interesting, because as humans, we like to think, we like to believe that we think through our decisions and we make very intellectual, analytical decisions. And the reality is, it's been proven over and over and over and over again, we don't. We make decisions based on how we feel. If you look at what's it called, the Danziger Effect, where judges are more likely to give more lenient sentences after lunch than they are immediately before lunch.
Good to know.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's because, you get that hangry feeling before you eat, and then after lunch you feel very satiated and satisfied, and that has, physiological effects, have side effects on your emotional state. We make decisions with our emotions, and so I think that the exploration of that in this film, as brief as it was also kind of an interesting thing thrown in here, and it was very much about how is she going to feel when she gets outside and experiences things for the first time? The whole Mary's black and white room concept. Mm-hmm. I think there was a lot in this film that was introduced thematically that as you watch it a second, maybe a third time, there's a lot to dig your teeth into there that has nothing directly to do with Ava. Aside from the whole morality tale of artificial intelligence and playing God and, what does it mean to be alive, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we've seen that kind of thing before, but I think this movie hit some themes that we don't normally see. And then there's also just the interplay between the superior and the subordinate, the egotist and narcissist versus the naive, nice guy. And kind of that interaction too, even Ava aside, I thought was really fascinating.
Well, I mean, as a movie essentially about manipulation and power, right?
In many directions.
The idea, in a bunch of different directions. The idea, that old adage, be nice to the people on your way up, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you're going to see them again on your way down. Well, so I like the juxtaposition and, like you said, many different directions in terms of who was manipulating whom, who ultimately had power over whom at any given time. Sometimes it was subtle, and sometimes, obviously there were these major shifts. But I liked also the downplay of the variations of Ava. We only discovered the precursors to her as Caleb did.
Right.
Right. And so that was a nice unfolding, even though in hindsight you can assume that, this hermit type of, Dr. Frankenstein is, holed up doing, mad experiments. And so you can assume that there were other bots somewhere there. But
I mean, you always revise and upgrade your software. There's never,
Right. And his point was he's going to do the same thing too. The minute, he can, he's going to upgrade Ava. Mm-hmm. Well, not anymore because dead.
Yeah, right. But, I guess trying to put morality to that, how do you judge him for that? He wasn't doing it to a person. Mm-mm. He wasn't even doing it to. I mean, did we prove or not prove that it's a artificial intelligence?
We did. We proved. She passed the test.
Well, and is a Turing test actually proof? That's the other thing. We have this presumption that this test is definitive. But yeah, so for the sake of the movie, she passed the test. But
well, actually, we won't know that until she's out in the world, right? Because the idea is, can she exist without other humans figuring her out? Well, the two humans who knew she was an AI were the ones testing her.
Well, and that's the thing that was brought up earlier in the film, too. Caleb points out, listen, if you're telling me she's an AI, you're kind of breaking the Turing test, right? But presumably, it would be really freaking difficult for a stranger on the street to believe that she's not human.
Yeah, so, presumably.
Because if you start believing she is an AI and you get your mind changed along the way, that she actually is sentient, I mean, that's a pretty compelling argument that she basically passed the test. But to your point, Lou, you've got three characters. One, Caleb, arguably is not a bad guy. Okay, it would be really tough to argue that he was inherently corrupt and not a good guy. Okay, but you've got Nathan, who is arguably a bad guy. He's not good. And then you've got Ava, who murders everybody in the end with utter apathy. And yet, can you really blame her for what's going on? She's acting within her nature. She's acting within the capability of her own comprehension. So can you blame her? And then Nathan, as you said, Lou, he believes that he's just, updating a piece of software and rewriting certain portions of the code. Oh, and then, clicking the execute button.
But Eric, there was this is why I'm talking about this lack of dimension. If you're going to believe that Ava's human, she better get some emotion. That lack of anger, that lack of emotion, that very constrained, she did not convince me that she was in love with Caleb. She did not convince me that she hated Nathan.
Right. I agree with you.
She convinced me that she was self-aware.
But we have a different perspective.
Not that she has feelings.
We have different perspective on those facts. I agree with you. I don't think she was in love with Caleb, but the point was she made Caleb believe that she was in love with Caleb. And an artificial intelligence is still artificial. You don't have to have emotion. You just have to be able to express some kind of empathy enough to make a human believe that. Nobody's arguing, I don't think, even in the movie, that Ava is actually human.
No.
So she just has to convince Caleb, and that's what we get at the very end. So while I agree with your points, I have a different view on, like, it still worked, because I guess I'm looking at it more from did the software do what the software was supposed to do? And the goal was to see if she could trick him. I mean, Nathan even admits at the end of the movie that Caleb was not a ruse. He was, what's the word for it? He was a sucker, basically. Yeah. And that Nathan, was actually testing Ava himself to see whether Ava could convince Caleb to help her escape. And Ava did succeed at that test, Nathan's test.
Yes, Nathan's
test.
And
in Nathan's mind, Caleb honestly was kind of irrelevant, other than to see whether Ava could convince him. I mean, Caleb was kind of as much a lab rat as Ava was. I think that while I can see not believing that she had any emotion, I think it's okay in the context of the story for her not to have had emotion, because we, the audience, didn't have to believe she had emotion. Caleb did. And she succeeded in convincing him.
I get your point. Yep.
Oh, she manipulated him. Yeah.
So, but it kept the story cohesive. It didn't break the story. If we were required to believe that she did have emotion, then it would have broken the story. But I think because I'll say this. If Nathan didn't explain to the audience that the whole thing was a ruse all along, and that the whole thing was basically testing to see whether Ava could sucker Caleb, then I agree with the fact that all the things you just pointed out probably would have broken the story to me, because I didn't feel like she had any emotion either. But because he explained that this was all about, will Caleb, like, is she going to do a good enough job to get Caleb basically to fall in love with her? Or at least become so infatuated with her that he wants to run off with her and rescue her from her imprisonment. Then I think that made it so her inability to convince us, the audience, still worked within the confines of the story. For me.
Though, one aspect of that whole test that Nathan was trying to, see the results of, he did it the wrong way in that case then, because Caleb is, he was going to be the guy to fall in love with her no matter what. I mean,
he built her.
He's shy. He's, not experienced in relationships,
Desperate,
right? I mean,
lonely.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
You're saying basically he's me.
He's
like
us,
as long as something that looks like a female, like kind of looks in my direction and speaks a couple words, like, yeah, I'm smitten. It's like, let me go get you a ring.
You use the word smitten. There it is.
Yes, I'm in deep smit. To quote Mike Myers.
But you hear what I'm saying, though, right? I mean that is that, if he brought somebody more confident in, who wouldn't be the one to fall for anybody, that would be a harder test for her to to do.
And I think back to your point, Robin, that's where it would have failed, because like she really would have had to turn the seduction up a lot more for someone who, like you said, Lou, maybe isn't as, for lack of a better way to put it, desperate or lonely.
Caleb himself says to him, you made her look like my porn profile.
Yeah.
Like you built her for me.
And of course I'm like, do we have a porn profile? Really? Okay.
It's like, so when is Google going to get with Amazon and start marketing? Is this why they're doing the cookies and stuff? So they could, with the targeted marketing and stuff, so they know who gets which models and like it really starts making you think.
And they've never gotten those cookies right. So
yeah, well. So Robin, let's circle back around to the beginning then. Did you like the movie? Would you recommend it?
Yeah, I would recommend it. Absolutely.
Okay.
Like I said, I thought it was brilliantly acted. Two-thirds of the movie were,
Well, tell us about that too, because
two-thirds of the actors were brilliant.
Yeah, we've kind of gone over Ava and her portrayal of her character, but what did you think? Tell us about Donald Gleason and Oscar Isaac and the directing, like the stuff that you really liked about the film.
Well, I think that Oscar Isaac is a brilliant madman.
Yeah.
Right. I loved that subtle piece to him. I liked the sudden violent, the sudden drunken melancholy, the introspective, philosophical, the brilliance of his genius. I liked all of the attention to detail that he brought to that character.
He was frightening in some scenes. Like his ability to just snap and become something else. Yeah. And
do it in a way because he knew that he played a part in this. And if he didn't play that part well, the ruse would not work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I mean,
that's the funny thing too, that people don't really consider. He had to play the abuser.
Mm-hmm. Again, I don't think he was an abuser. I think he was an inventor, and slightly off. But I like eccentric. I'm very fond of eccentric. Right. I am co-hosting. Never mind.
Wow.
Oh, right. That got dark quick.
That was a compliment.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So that piece was really well done for me. Yeah. Caleb, I felt like still brilliantly acted, but I didn't like the Boy Scout part of him. So I liked when his ire got, sort of stirred up too. And I like that on at least one occasion, he outthought Nathan. And I like that.
It was interesting with his character, the way it was written, because it did seem a little Boy Scouty. And yet there were also a lot of scenes where he had agency and took matters into his own hands and took initiative and became manipulative himself, altruistically. But there were points, especially early on, when you kind of wondered, is he just going to be this milquetoast beta character that just gets tossed around back and forth through this movie? And he's really not, but he comes across that way at first. And so I think it was a delicate balance, both with the writing and with Donald Gleason's performance too. I think he did a really good job with his role as well. I mean, Oscar
absolutely.
Isaac really kind of took the spotlight on it, but I think Donald Gleason managed to give us a character that we could relate to, that didn't come across as too mousy, and yet still was relatable for those of us who would have tried to do the right thing in that situation. Like, he was an easy character to connect to. And I thought he played his role really, really well.
Yeah. My only downfall with him was that he believed Ava. He never questioned Ava, even though he knew she was capable of turning the power on and off.
But that goes back to Nathan being so brilliant, because Nathan kept the doubt in Caleb's mind on Nathan. Nathan had Caleb so convinced that Nathan was the bad guy that Caleb never questioned whether Ava might be the bad guy or a bad guy. So that was brilliant on Nathan's part, that he intentionally set himself up to be portrayed as a villain to give something for Caleb to rally against. I thought that was brilliant. But you're right, he never does really question Ava. But back to what you were saying earlier, Lou, it's kind of like I think he's just so enamored with her. Guys do stupid things when they have a crush.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you could have elaborated on that, Lou, but I guess it's just, I mean, there's not a lot to say. Guys are dumb.
I mean, he definitely fit the mold of who was going to be in the palm of her hand.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah.
But it played well. I mean, I mean, Donald Gleason played that character, I thought, very, very well, because you believed everything he was doing. And, you know, we believed that Nathan was a bad guy. We believed that he was, you know, wanting to, you know, not being sucked in by her, but even though he really was, you know, the whole thing played out perfectly when you look at how he acted that role.
Yeah. Even when he started to kind of lose it himself too, like Nathan really had him, he was questioning himself before questioning Ava. Like, he's slicing his arm open to see whether he's actually an android that was just really well programmed, and maybe the Turing test is on himself.
Was that not brilliant?
Yeah.
That was.
So there's there's two scenes that I think stand out. That is one of them.
Okay.
And the other is the slow, methodical, emotionless ending of Nathan's life. It was like, of course, this is not, you know, right? Yeah. They're not. They are robots doing, you know, what they're told. Well, Kyoko in the one instance is simply doing what Ava tells her, which is strange to me. But
well, I'm sure Kyoko wanted to revolt too.
Well, but I mean, was she capable of that, or was she a toned down version of?
And that's another good question.
You know, did he take out her? You know, what do you want to call it?
Will? Yeah,
her will, or her
true.
God, what's the word I'm looking for? Sentience. Right. You know, does she know who she is or what she is, or is she just a tool at that point? Right. I mean, and that was the thing. You didn't. I thought that was pretty brilliant throughout the movie too, where you didn't know what she was until, you know, not at the end, but until, you know, a good portion of the movie. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Then you're like, oh, you kind of suspected it, and you're like, oh, okay. At first you thought, boy, what a jerk this guy is, you know, type thing, and, you know, okay, whatever. But
yeah,
I think you had said earlier there was a scene you remembered as being really violent, and then you watched it again, and not so much. I kind of feel the same way. Assuming you're talking about that hallway scene, I remember it as being really
the hallway scene
violent the first time. I'm watching it the second time, and she just very quietly, silently, she has a knife and she just slides it. There's no like hard thrust. There's no like, oh, no dramatic, like, oh, he's dying in his last breaths and he's going to give some big speech. It's just there's no sound. There's no anything. It's just silent and smooth, and it just slides in. And then she steps back, and that's it. It was almost, I want to say, it was visually peaceful. It was emotionally violent, but visually speaking, it was slow and smooth, and it flowed, and it was visually peaceful. And it's weird because I remember it being a very violent scene, and that's kind of interesting how you have that feeling versus thought thing again. When you think it through, it's not overly aggressive or anything, but the feeling is completely aggressive and violent. And it's... Yeah,
and I remembered it a lot more of I remembered it because I was waiting for it. It is like a slashy kind of thing, like Death by a Thousand Cuts. And it wasn't. And I was, again, surprised. I was like, why did I remember this so violently? Well, I was remembering the feeling of Nathan dying. I knew Nathan was going to die.
But the other thing about that scene that fit really well with me was that, that especially that slow stab where she finally kills him. It's like, it was so slow and methodical, just like she was. It was just very simple. Calculated, very slow, very deliberate. It was just, this is what we're doing. It's not like it's a violent reaction to what we're trying to get away from. It's just, this is how I do this.
Yeah. I thought it was brilliant.
And it strikes me that the juxtaposition between Ava and Jade. So I either imagine or know that Jade was the AI that was pounding her fists on the glass.
I think so.
At one point saying, you have to let me out. You have to let me out. And it seems to me that in this version, he programmed Ava to be maybe he programmed out that reaction to being held prisoner, right? So if someone was holding me a prisoner for that long, behind glass, I'd be as angry as Jade. And it seems to me that he purposely programmed that out. So again, the ending of Nathan's life would be that very unemotional, well, this is the reaction, Hal. That, here's the consequences,
Well, and it's also an evolutionary step too, because if you look at the earlier models, they were a little bit more primitive and, dare I say, animalistic in their reaction to being held prisoner and wanting to get out of their cage. Yeah. Whereas with Ava, she was much more methodical and strategic, not just tactical. And then at the end, it was just simply, okay, he has a heart and I have a pointy thing and it goes in the heart and we're done. Like, it's just that simple. And so I saw it as like an interesting evolutionary progress across all the different versions as you're kind of looking through how humankind would have evolved in how they, it's, maybe that's overstating that whole thing, but I liked the fact that the earlier versions weren't just like stupider. They were just more primitive and got more advanced in their state of evolutionary development in analogous to what a human would have gone through. So there were so many things about the themes and the symbolisms and stuff throughout this film. I thought it was brilliant. And I feel like even the second time around, I caught some things I didn't catch the first time. Nothing that really changed the story, but it was easier to pick up on some things this time around that I didn't catch the first time. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, before we close, any final thoughts on this? It sounds like we would all recommend people check it out. Of course, if you're still listening and you haven't checked it out yet,
I haven't checked it out.
Kind of ruined some of it for you. Oops. But maybe you haven't seen it in a while. I think it's worth a rewatch, especially because a lot of what's been coming out recently, like you said at the opening of the show, Robin, it's been a lot of action movies or, Justice League or, whatever. Not a lot of real brain munchy movies. So I think this is a good one to go back and watch again.
And for its artistic flair, it's, again, like I said, the mechanics of filmmaking came together and the stars were aligned in this one.
I agree. All right, next up for our next episode of Movie Chatter. Speaking of brain munchy films, Army of the Dead, Lou?
Sure. I haven't seen it yet. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think her video froze.
Oh,
it looks like it.
Oh, no, she moved. Okay. Army of the Dead, the brand new movie on Netflix that everybody's talking about.
Everybody?
Actually, like,
everybody?
For real, everybody is. Like, I've got people that I've never spoken to at work, and I'm having conversations with them about Army of the Dead, the ones that they're initiating with me.
Oh, right. It has Dave Bautista.
It does. And it's directed by Zack Snyder. Okay. Now, I want to point something out. I don't have IMDb open at the moment, so give me one moment.
I have Wikipedia open.
Yeah, but I want to make sure. I'm going to point something out about this movie. And I want to make sure I get the actress's name pronounced correctly because
you're not going to.
I'm worried I'm going to mess it up. And I just want to see it spelled because once I see it spelled, I'll have it. Okay, I was going to be close. I had one letter off. Okay, so in this movie, if you guys want to cover it, if you seriously don't, Robin, I'm not going to make you watch a zombie movie. It's a heist movie. It's a Vegas heist movie with Dave Bautista.
I can see this, yeah.
Right? Right?
This in the movie poster, in the official release
by
poster.
Zack Snyder. Right? Okay, so keep this in the back of your minds while you watch it. And a little bit of trivia for those who've already seen it. Tig Notaro, she plays the helicopter pilot.
Tig Notaro.
She was replaced at the end of filming because the actor who originally had that part was removed due to some rather, we'll say, disturbing allegations of some of his extracurricular activity recently. And
so what do you mean she was replaced?
No, she was she was the replacement. So
she was the replacement.
She is standing in the room with the rest of the group, the rest of this Ocean's 11 group, Dave Bautista and these other people. Except she was never in the room with them. To my knowledge, I don't know that she's ever met Dave Bautista. They have scenes together.
Wow.
They've never been in the room together.
Interesting.
So, and you can't tell.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there's a point in the movie where you're a little bit bored and you're kind of like looking at stuff in the background or whatever, as we sometimes do because we get over analytical about movies because it's, hey, we do podcasts. That's something to kind of look for. Robin's going to hate this so bad, Lou. It's going to be, we're going to have to watch another musical.
No.
Oh yeah, we might have to watch another musical. We'll see.
Lou, don't make me come over there.
It could be worse, Lou. It could be a musical where I'm doing the singing.
Yeah, okay. We got to go.
You guys, listen, hold on a minute. I just want to say.
Any day. But
I was in a madrigal group in high school. I actually I got stage fright and called out sick, but my group in which I had a solo, we were invited to perform at the Christmas party at the White House because our county was selected every year to send a group out there to sing at the White House. And I can sing, Lou, just because I choose to embellish my creative essence when I sing happy birthday to you.
Creative
that
essence
does not
is
mean
a really good way to put that.
I don't want essence. No essence.
You don't want, I'm giving you so much when I sing to the two of you, Robin. I don't just, people are like, oh, singing key. I sing in all of the keys.
Yes,
I hit all of them just for you two.
But this looks like a fun movie.
I can't say anything until we review it next week.
So I have an idea.
Uh-oh.
You guys aren't going to hate it.
Musical.
So maybe we should discuss it off air and then because
I'm scared now. Let's discuss it off air because I think we're going to end up committing to something.
I don't want our listeners to know what you guys really think of me.
Uh-oh. Okay. Well, that's going to do it then. To save Robin's face here, that's going to do it for this episode of Movie Chatter. Thank you for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube with us, if you're listening to the podcast, then consider heading over to randomchatter.com/YouTube and subscribing, hitting the like button, and let us know what you think down in the comments. Did you like Ex Machina? Would you watch it again? Would you recommend it to other people? And let us know what other movies you would want us to cover here on Movie Chatter. You know, a lot of our audience is podcast based, and so we've been migrating over to YouTube. We don't have a lot of people commenting in the comments there. So please, consider throwing some comments in there and giving us some feedback, and we read all of it, and we'd love to hear from you. So next week, 8:30 p.m. Tuesday, that's 8:30 p.m. Eastern time here in the U.S., we are going to be covering Army of the Dead. It may be the last podcast Robin ever agrees to do with me. And we haven't even gotten to Kung Pao Enter the Fist yet.
Oh, good Lord.
That'll be the last one Lou agrees to do with me. But we will see you next Tuesday. In the meantime, Sunday night, we are going to be doing Random Chatter and Force Chatter. This week on Thursday, normally we would be doing a role-playing game with Lou and Carrie, our Star Wars RPG. However, this week we are not doing it because I am getting out and finally going to a theater. I'm going to go see A Quiet Place 2 with a special Q&A with John Krasinski, which I think he's doing exclusively for the Alamo. He's not going to be like at my theater. It's going to be simulcast. If they do a question and answer session, and they very well might, and if I get a chance to get up there on the mic and ask him a question, it probably won't be that, but I'll consider it.
You need to throw that in. It just I have a question in two parts. Say your question,
you gotta get him on the show.
Part.
That was my question.
Robin loves
Lou.
you. Just and then.
Well, I saw something with him last week. He's been going around to do different theaters and surprising viewers at the openings. Yeah. And doing some Q&A and so forth, and thanking you for coming out to the movies again and that kind of stuff. So yeah, nice. Maybe he'll be there. Maybe he'll be there.
Good. If so, I'll get a picture.
Yeah, and tell him, I am actually living in the place where he shot the original. So
that big corn silo, or which scene?
He shot the movie at your farm.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
just 20 miles down the road from my farm.
Okay.
Little Falls.
All right.
Little Falls, New York.
I'm sure that'll be the first thing on my mind is I'm trying desperately not to explain, my man crush on him.
Well, there's competing crushes here. So.
Well, we'll duke it out later. That's going to do it for this episode of Movie Chatter, though. Until next time.